Hello and welcome to our episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today I'm very excited. It feels like we've been waiting a long time for this one, but Simon, Rowland, how are you?
Very well, thanks. In the sweltering heat.
I know, well, it was less so than yesterday. We met each other at a conference yesterday, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. That was a hot day. We're filming this right in the very heat, the heart, the heat wave. But this is a nice cool studio, so we're in here at the time. We're staying here for the rest of the day.
Exactly.
Listen, lovely to have you both on. Limeglass is the company. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to be talking a little bit about this AI revolution, whichever way you want to talk about it. Lots of interesting things to dive into. But let's start with the intros. If you both care to introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about the company as well.
Okay, I'll pick this up as so I'm Rowland. Essentially, background about myself. I've had 4 jobs, 3 of which are basically co-founded companies. So I'm a glutton for punishment. And Tom and I have worked together for well over 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years.
Stop counting.
Yeah, and he actually gave me my first job when I left university.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can see what it's had to me because I actually had it.
Yeah, shackled in there.
Beautiful. And you're starting the business up now.
So we picked that up
10 years ago, was it?
Okay.
10 years ago. Do you want
Time
to run through where that came from?
So in a previous company, we were actually financial market analysis. So we were selling research to banks and buy side.
Yeah.
And what the challenge that we had, I'm a technologist at heart, and we were working on trying to understand the content that we were generating and what the consumers were wanting to read about. And it was really trying to map that we found that we were trying to get our edge. When we sold the company, we got together afterwards to then figure out, well, actually, how can we solve this problem for other people? Because it's obviously a big challenge trying to find information where you massively being generated every day. And that's where we came up with the idea of trying to identify paragraphs by their meaning, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's obviously evolved a little bit over time as well. As you say, 10 years on, you've probably seen one of the most fast evolving periods of technology in that sort of space. What's that meant for the company itself as well?
Well, it's really interesting because 10 years ago, this is pre-AI and everything else. We were dealing with the same problems, which is in financial markets. And I should just say those previous companies I started are still going strong. But basically, in the financial research in particular, it's really tough to find the right information.
Yeah.
And now with AI in the last 2 years, it's like picked up all the stuff and chucked it up in the air and we start again. But actually, we're delighted because it's focused on the key aspect, which is how to identify good content. And we're now at the stage where we've got banks who are using our products for their clients to find the information. So, today we've got people use the chatbots, either the turnkey chatbot where it's a Limeglass sort of white labeled chatbot, or even banks that have their own AI teams, and we're fusing that into to enhance their AI assets. So
I think that's it's been interesting. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so no, I was going to say, and to get there, one of the challenges, you have to be able to prove that what we do works. And to do that, we've actually had to undergo several kind of adversarial evaluations to get there. And we have to prove against what people can do internally how much better we can make that. And thankfully, we've able to do that, which has led to those proof of concept, those products that we're running now.
Isn't that brilliant to see that sort of constant evolution of where things are happening? And I want to just sort of circle back a little bit, because we were talking then about the conference yesterday, and one of them was the innovation in AI, which must have been right up your street.
Yep.
The Quorum 15 event it was yesterday over here in the city. And one of the bits I think is interesting, this is a conversation we're having quite a lot about, is about the probabilistic nature of AI. Now, I always hark back, and I've said this on this show before, I hark back to a conversation with a friend of mine who's very senior in the bank, and he talks about the issues of adoption in his world. He's always been a skeptic at various different stages and then sort of gets onto the bandwagon. He's more on the bandwagon now. But the first thing he said about it was, in finance, approximately right isn't good enough. That feels like something which has been an inhibitor but also an opportunity to get right. Tell us what was going through your minds when you were hearing about the probabilistic nature of AI.
Simple. Probabilistic means problematic. Full stop. I think you actually hit the nail on the head. Basically, it's in the financial markets, regulated financial markets. You've got to be sure what you're getting back, right? It's absolutely vital.
Yeah, and really, I think the essence of the problem is we've been used to dealing with systems that behave a certain way. They've always behaved deterministically, which means you put the same thing in, you get the same thing out the other end. Probabilistic solutions work very different, and we're having to adapt to how that works at every level. And the main characteristics of it is it will always give you a different answer. It may or may not give you the right answer, but it will always give you an answer, and it will always sound concise, consistent. And this is the problem that we essentially solve, because we actually noticed that there was something missing in everything.
Yeah, okay. And talk to us about that. So talk to us about what was missing.
Well, what's missing is the meaning. Not the meaning of life, but the meaning of what you're doing. I think, John.
Yeah.
The difficult questions I give to Simon.
He always does.
It's a good
Yes. He always gives me the difficult questions to answer. So when we designed what we were developing long before AI came along, what we decided to do was kind of map out the financial markets. So we built this huge kind of graph of like all the financial concepts that you think of all linked together. And so we wanted to try and identify.
Vision of this and what that
you
must have a picture of it.
It's 200,000. But the problem is it's moving and increasing over time. So they add about 1,000 topics a month.
Yeah.
So this animal is growing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, living all.
So the problem that you find is that AI is not just one thing. It's built up of different components. So if you have a large language model, people don't realise that that's not actually a search engine. It needs to have information. So if it doesn't have the information, the facts available, just like you or I, if we don't have the facts, we can't answer the question. The thing is, it will try to answer the question, no matter whether it has those facts. So the problem is not necessarily the AI itself. It's actually what the information that it's coming from. So when you go back to just quickly on to the problems I listed earlier about probabilistic, you've got several things there that you would then want to say, how do I solve this? Which is, how do you make it more accurate? How do you know whether it is accurate or not? But more importantly, or as importantly, is how can you do that without spending loads and loads of money on tokens?
Which comes. I mean, I've been listening to podcasts about that for the last fortnight about token burn and what everyone's doing with it.
Yes.
And it becomes a really important thing because I'm fascinated with the potential of AI. We were talking about this before.
Huge.
In every single shape of where it goes. But there's also certain elements. Look, my view on this has always been the biggest issue that I've seen over the last 20 years in businesses, full stop, and in pretty much across any industry, is how you can increase productivity. There's certainly in various parts of where we live, there's a productivity crisis where we've been moving backwards and moving backwards. I think about most industries, and people aren't necessarily keeping up with doing more from the same. But this has got a great opportunity to get everyone so much more productive. That's the back where it goes. And I think we've been spending so much time over the last 2 decades in financial services and certainly around the vendor space about eliminating cost and reducing cost. And hopefully that's something which can come alongside productivity where it goes. But getting it wrong, the token burns can obviously have a completely different effect on what that can do. So I'm really interested to see what that means in your world.
Well, it brings the financial markets is so key to go back to. You just can't afford to get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Clients have a problem.
Yeah, it's absolutely about that. But actually, they're two sides of the same coin. Because if you're the answer to trying to figure out how to make this more accurate is actually to feed it the right information.
Yeah.
And that comes down essentially to search, which is the problem that we set out to solve 10 years ago. It's just that now you've got an AI on the end consuming it rather than a human as an intermediary. So what you want to then try and do is optimize what's given to the AI to understand. The more accurate you can make that, and more optimized you make that, the cheaper it's going to be as well. So you're solving two problems with one coin, because you've got reducing the amount of information, making sure that it's going in correctly, but also you're reducing the cost at the same time.
I think you're at that point. There's this retrieval aspect, right? You've got the LLM, it's getting, the input it's going to work on.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is we add this meaning layer in on the input side. So effectively, if we go back 10 years, what we were trying to do is be able to identify key paragraphs in context in order just to have a better search, that you could just have the paragraphs across many documents and have to go in and out of an PDF. That means that we'd use our knowledge graph to label all the content at source.
Yeah.
So we talk with banks, they either auto tag us before they publish the information with our information. But basically we're enhancing the content that the LLM will then search, but also we're helping that search because it's been labeled, granularly tagged, whatever you want to call it, we can identify, and it's in a knowledge graph, so parents, children, all that's it. We can actually provide better quality information that we can keep down to minimum to give into the LLM.
Yeah, and that's essentially what we proved in our, all the evaluations that we had, and why they selected us to do this. There's also another point to it, just to jump around a bit. But one of the other questions I posed is, how do you know whether it's right or not? Right. And you can't trust. A lot of people are trying to use AI to validate AI. If you can't trust one, you can't trust the other. Right?
Exactly.
So the only way to know whether an answer is correct is to compare it against the source.
Yeah.
And the good thing about finance is there's so much information available, and it's all really gold standard. There's a lot of gold standard research. You've got all of the, the information on all the companies when they produce it, all the company files, all that sort of stuff. It's there. It can be referred to. The problem has always been the capability of a human to process that information.
Yeah.
AI is excellent at trying to summarize that and use it down. But the problem is you then need to be able to validate, is what it did correct? The only way to do that is to be able to compare it to the source. So because we're able to extract all this information, we can have a version of it which has been processed outside of the AI that they can compare it with. And that's the key to be able to understand. Is this telling me what's correct?
Yeah.
I can then go back to the source.
So we actually call that extractive AI.
Yeah.
So extractive AI is basically what the analyst said or what the true content had. So you've got both the generative, extractive next to each other. Now, as I say, this is live in production currently to people being asked some questions. They can see the generative part, but you can actually read what the analyst said. So you can pick up the subtleties and nuances of the RNZ. You can then click on read document or whatever, but it's side by side. So that's a really key point. It's key because compliance, it's auditable. You can go back on that.
Yeah.
That's a really important part of it. And then we come back to your audit piece. And a lot of what you've been saying there is about this whole trust journey that you're on with AI. And trust is needed no more than in this industry, but other than potentially the health space.
Yes.
So if you look in both very heavily governed areas where AI has got real opportunities to come in, there's some barriers to entry that you probably don't have in certain other areas. So you've written about the sort of 6 pillars of trust.
I have, yes.
And I told you beforehand that whenever I think of a 5 or a 6, I'll always miss one when I'm doing it. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
You're going to put on the spot. You're going to answer the main one thing. I can do that, yes. So
Come on and give
the first one is auditability. We've spoken about it today. You need to be able to understand where something's come from and whether you can trust it. All right. The second one is authority. Is the information that's being talked about or discussed or processed together, is it authoritative on the topic, or is it just a side piece of information that it happens to have brought in? The third one is provenance, right? So you can have a piece of information, but where did it actually come from? How did it get there? Is the kind of chain of responsibility all the way through preserved so that you know and you can trust that information is where it's come from? But also, going back to what we were talking about earlier, being able to connect you with the original piece of information is important. For if you're a publisher of, say, some kind of information, even on the internet now, even yourselves included, everything that gets put on the internet now is kind of disintermediated through AI. What you really want to be able to do is restore that back. It benefits both sides because you can validate whether the information's correct, but also the people who wrote it and spend the effort doing what information are actually benefiting the people reading what they wrote. The third part of it goes back to making sure that the evidence that the AI is working on is optimal, is correct, and that goes back to improving the. One thing we haven't touched on is kind of the temporal aspect, because information in financial markets is changing every day, every minute, actually. So you want to be making sure that you're working with the most recent piece of information, not necessarily the most relevant thing that happened in the last 6 years or whatever. That's what search engines are good at, finding the most relevant, but not necessarily the most recent. And the
that's
last
really
thing,
interesting.
the last thing is obviously what we're talking about in terms of probabilistic. If you can make something that's deterministic, and you can give yourself all of the answers and evidence that's been repeatable every time, and you can see where that's come from. That gives you more trust in how it works. So the whole thing kind of fits together.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well done.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I should know that.
I'll give them a break now. Thank you so much. Well done. Exactly. I think what we're essentially saying is we've got a granular tag or label that we apply, whether it's UK politics or T-notes or, I don't know, whatever, puts and calls and whatever, across markets and macro, right? So we've got something for every sort of data release you've got. That can be applied to research, which is our expertise from like 20 years, but it can also be applied to any financial content, including chats, right? News, and all the rest of it, but also to data. So you can have a 10-year gilt price. If you can link that to news and research or other content or NVIDIA's EBITDA, and you can link that to any piece of content, that becomes really powerful in a front-end UI. I was talking to someone at the conference yesterday and said, I just put in, whatever company, Tesla, into ChatGPT and it gives me all the information. That's fine. I'm thinking, but you don't know what it's not giving you, and it's giving you stuff that might be out of date, and you've got to look up the links, all the rest of it.
I totally very well.
And if you one of the things before AI, if you were to go and use Google, right, you get 25 results in the first page. Right?
Yeah.
What you don't know is what you don't get in those 25. There's obviously thousands of pieces of information. And if you remember what it was like when you didn't have AI answering, you'd have to go through and figure out which of those answers was right. The AI is doing that, but if it doesn't have the right piece of information going back, it doesn't got the right things in the results, it can't give it to you.
It's even worse, actually, in the sense that it's getting a lot of, you imagine, 3 pages of your Google search. It's not Google search because it's on the closed environment, but it's giving you an awful lot back on the Fed or whatever it is. But you're only interested in a bit of it. But all that other stuff that it's dealing with can give it noise and hallucinations. So it's better, rather than give it too much, keep it concise. It also keeps the cost down.
Yeah.
Everything we've done so far, this sort of label, that's labeling all data information at source. You only do it once. We're not using any LLM for that part of it. We've just got a very enhanced search that's adding in, really detailed metadata to content, which then opens up an awful lot of things, because it's not just, we've spent 10 years on this, AI's been around for a million years of that. And really the use cases before were linking, identifying what is in content. And therefore it's not a binary yes or no, it's got this label. We actually work out metrics. How much of this paragraph is about this subject and how much is about that subject?
Yeah, that actually allows you to do more than just find information. You can kind of map information. So say you took all of your podcasts or anything that you've been writing, you could actually draw a map of that and find out how much you've been talking about different things and compare that over time, which is useful as a signal of itself, because you can then feed that back into, okay, this is what people have been discussing, and this is what the stock price of this has been going on, and other metrics. So it becomes data in and of itself.
It's incredible, isn't it? And as you're talking, my head's worrying about the potential out of it. I want to talk about the business itself, right? So you guys are trusted and have worked with over the last decade some of the biggest financial institutions in the world.
Yes.
And I imagine the appetite is only continuing to come forward as this becomes more and more relevant, and the potential, as we're talking about what people can actually do with it there. So why are there's two parts to this question. Number one is, why are people trusting you to do that specifically, and number two is what are some of the things that you can be doing for people who are watching this and recognising some of these problems? What is it you're able to?
I mean, obviously we look so trustworthy.
That's a good start. That's a good start. How long have you got to answer that question? Do you want to pick up one of those?
Well, why people trust us? Well,
they don't.
They don't. I think,
why would you?
I think it touches on several things. It's because we can give them something that they haven't actually got access to at the moment.
Yeah.
What is out there, and it's so complicated, it's so confusing. All of this technology is changing all the time. How things work at the moment and have historically worked is you're either trying to find information by it's text or something, or how similar it is. But the problem is, if you're looking at similarity, there's no edge to that. It's like, okay, this might be similar to that, but how much? What you really need to be able to understand is it this or is it that? And that makes a big distinction. And when they find that actually we can give them that information in a way that makes people be able to use data like sort of unstructured information, like then treated data, it gives them a whole load more tools. But it takes a bit of time for them to understand that that's what we can bring to them. But once they do, they then suddenly realise there's all these things that can come out. And I think it's going back to what we spoke to about before, which is we can give them the provenance, we can give them the auditability, we can give them all of those things. Those are really the pillars. And when I wrote that, I actually it was off the back of an email. I was saying something. This is what the things we've worked on. I was actually these are all
You're suddenly inspired.
I inspired myself. And
So the Jerry Maguire.
exactly. Because we take it from this kind of thing like information first, actually looking at how information is preserved in any system. A lot of places, what they do is they look at it as kind of like the product first, or the system first, where they look into they work into the restrictions of the system they want to use, and they make the information fit. Whereas actually it should be the other way around. Information is the most important thing in any of this stuff. It should be preserved as much as possible. So if you take that view, that's where literally underpinned everything, and kind of the 6 pillars sort of came out of that.
I think one of the challenges is all what you talk to institutions is, as with everything, there's an element of buy or build, right? Yes. There's an element of sort of
Buy and.
yes,
Yes.
So there's we're the best, and it's AI. Firstly, it's so new. It's going to change. We want to control it, everything. Firstly, we're frightened about a lot of stuff, but we want to control it so we can grow with it. And there's an element when you hit them with certain issues that they haven't yet encountered very often. So, in a POC, it all looks great. It works well. You put it in production. And because it's probabilistic, there's that time where it's not working. So what we often hear is, but AI is going to get better. And yes, it is. It's definitely going to get better. It's going to keep getting better. It's going to keep getting more expensive. In particular, the terms you look at it, it's getting expensive. And we're seeing institutions already reacting to that. It's still there. It's still going to get better. But the problems we're talking about now, the probabilistic issues that we're touching on now, are still going to be relevant.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is adding a thin layer in that retrieval process to enhance the sort of, if you want, the data-ready information that goes into the LLMs to this garbage in, garbage out, right? So you just try and make that better in order to minimise the hallucinations.
And allowing people to have that insight that allows them to make better decisions.
And check with extractives, is this actually true? Is it actually, So that's why those 6 pillars, actually each one of those pillars is fundamental.
Yeah. I want to talk about something else that you guys have been writing about, and I'm going to sort of read it directly. Where you talk about not just selling an AI vision, but selling reality as well. And I think that's such an important part of this, isn't it? Because there are a lot of snake oil salesmen in this sort of place. When we've got the AI gold rush, there's a lot of people who are talking about these hypotheticals. There's a lot of actual companies as well who are talking about what they want to do and hypotheticals around it. But that's the reality piece is really important. Expand on that a little bit, because I thought it was really, I don't hear that enough.
No, and I think what you alluded to is right. We're all on LinkedIn, and we've already noticed the explosion on LinkedIn of so many AI experts. Everybody's got AI in their titles now, but it's also very, very easy to write content and to write things which look technical and everything. And there's so much noise around the area, and there's so much kind of vested interest to promote X, Y, Z. Yeah. It's quite difficult, for anybody to stand out in all of that. And so, which is why when we go back to, we had to go through like literally 12 months adversarial evaluation against one of the premium companies, financial companies, AI specialists for an entire year trying to, figure out how we impacted it. And that, again, it fell in our favour, which enables us to say we've actually made these things and they're working in production in some of the biggest companies in the world. And it's understanding the fundamentals of it. It's very easy, as Rowland said earlier, to knock up something. Now anybody can be a coder when typing in, but you can get something that looks really good. But is it going to work when it's in production? That's the
Well,
big
it will
question.
work most of the time.
Yes.
Maybe 90% of the time.
Yes.
But do you want to trust that 1%? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, you can't, can you?
I mean, you're not going to get an autonomous car
Yeah.
thinking, I hope it's one of those 99%.
Yes.
But I keep on the Waymos are coming past our window.
Right.
Yes.
Basis of that. And I'm absolutely fascinated by them, but I'm not sure the trust is quite there yet.
No. Let's get there.
It will get, I'm sure. I'm
But
sure.
it will be, because, you know, everyone's building into these things like we are. But what we're saying is you need to build in, bringing extra layers to make that as close as possible.
Yeah. It's good. People talk about guardrails, essentially that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked as well about vision's easy, production's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to this. As I've had my wave from behind the camera,
You have.
let's move into what that actually means and sort of challenges you do. Everyone in the space is facing some challenges head on.
Yeah.
That production's hard seems like an obvious challenge to be
Yeah.
again. Tell us what sort of things you're faced with at the moment, how you're going through them, and what it looks like moving further forward. Because it must be just such work together for 25 years. This could be the most exciting time.
It is. I
Full
think
stop.
There was a
This is
period
passion.
where the banks closed their doors and said, AI, I'm not talking third parties, we can do this ourselves and we'll learn it. They've got to a stage now where they've tried it, they've got the scars, and they realise that actually on certain things they need a little bit of input. So
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It goes back to what we were talking about before. It's the build versus buy. It's always a challenge when you're selling to financial institutions. They've got these huge IT departments, and it's so easy to mock up a proof of concept that it's very simple to then say, well, okay, we can now take this and build on that. But everything that you see is the problematic we've been talking about today, and sorry to all of your readers, it's got a bit technical. And also listeners, it's got a bit technical, but the nuances and everything is what's hidden behind the prompt. Okay? So all this stuff is hidden behind like a big iceberg underneath. And when you understand this, you can see where all the problems are, but you've got to then try and convince people that actually it's not replacing what you can do internally, it's actually augmenting it. So that's really where we're at.
And I think it's key point on prompts. We haven't used that word up to now. A lot of talk is about prompt engineering. Yes, that's important. But what we're talking about today is something fundamental that mainly, a lot of people realise, but probably a lot of people don't realise. So sorry about the technical.
Yes.
But you know what? We've got a very technical audience, so
Really.
they love that stuff. And so let's finish with the company, helping some of the biggest companies in the world. Tell us what's exciting about the rest of 2026 for you, and tell us how people should get in touch and find out a little bit more.
Well, what we've been concentrating on the sell side, now we're looking at the buy side, and that's hugely
Big appetite.
big appetite. Lots of different use cases. We're looking at picking things out of chat rather than just quotes other information out of chat. Financial documents like think use, all that sort of earnings forwards, all that sort of stuff, as well as research. So the fact that we can label everything across, I think, is hugely exciting. There's a lot of use cases coming through there.
Yeah, it's bringing meaning to the markets. That's what I think we want to do.
There's another gap on it. Listen, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Thanks to both of you for coming into it. I've been looking forward to it since, what was it? It's probably about a couple of months ago when we first met. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you back in, and serendipitous. We had the warm up for it yesterday.
Warm up.
And the warm up.
Warm up.
Great to
Thank
see you.
you
Thanks
very
for coming
much.
in.
Thanks
Thanks
very
a
much for joining.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.